On my daughter's 21st birthday, she said on the mic, "My mom has reached the last phase of her life. I pay all her expenses." Everyone applauded, but when I took the mic, smiles turned into silence. Hello, my dear listeners. Before I begin my story, I would be very happy if you subscribe and hit the like button. Please write in the comments which city or country you are listening from. Now enjoy the story. I remember that evening very clearly, not because it was loud, not because there were too many people, but because for the first time in my life, my own house did not feel like mine. The living room lights were brighter than usual. Too bright. They made every corner look sharp, as if the walls themselves were watching me. Streamers hung from the ceiling, twisting slowly whenever the door opened. Balloons bumped into each other softly, making faint sounds that felt louder than they should have. I stood near the kitchen doorway, my hands folded in front of me, watching everything as if I were a guest who had arrived too early. Linda was turning 21 that night. 21. People say it only happens once, and that is why I told myself I should not complain. That is why I told myself it was fine that my back hurt from standing too long. That is why I ignored the dull ache in my legs and the tightness in my chest. That had nothing to do with age. I had paid for the decorations myself. I had paid for the food, the music, the rented chairs, the small stage they set up in the corner. I had even paid for the cake, chocolate with white frosting, because Linda said vanilla felt too old-fashioned. No one knew that part, and at that moment, I did not need them to know. Linda walked past me, her heels clicking against the floor, her phone pressed to her ear. She was smiling the kind of smile that looks practiced, the kind you wear when you are being watched. "Just come already," she said into the phone. "Everyone's here." She did not look at me when she said it. I told myself not to read into that. Young people are busy, I thought. Young people forget things, I thought. The doorbell rang again. More laughter filled the room. More voices I did not recognize. Linda's friends, bright, confident, careless in the way only youth can be. They filled the house quickly, leaning against furniture, setting drinks down wherever they wanted, moving as if the space belonged to them. I stepped aside to let them pass. One young woman brushed past my arm and did not notice. Or maybe she noticed and did not think it mattered. I felt my shoulders sting slightly, not from the touch, but from the absence of an apology. I moved closer to the wall. From where I stood, I could see the table with the gifts. Colorful bags, shiny paper, cards with handwriting I did not recognize. I wondered briefly if any of those cards said thank you for the party. The music started, not too loud at first, just enough to make conversation feel lighter, to make people lean closer to each other. Linda stood near the center of the room now, laughing, posing for pictures, lifting her chin at just the right angle. Someone handed her a microphone. I noticed it immediately. My stomach tightened. I did not know why. Linda tapped the mic once, twice. The sound cut through the room, sharp and sudden. The music lowered. The chatter faded. "All right, everyone," she said, her voice confident, playful. "Can I have your attention for a second?" People turned toward her. Smiles stayed on their faces. Phones lifted. I stayed where I was, half in shadow, half in light. Linda laughed lightly, waiting for the room to settle. She glanced around, then finally her eyes found me. For a moment, just a moment, I thought she was going to thank me. She smiled wider. "Hello, my friends," she said into the microphone. "This is my mom." Her hand gestured in my direction. A few heads turned. A few people nodded politely. Some smiled at me the way you smile at someone you expect to disappear again soon. "She has reached the last stage of her age," Linda continued, her tone casual, almost proud. "And I take care of all her expenses." The room stayed quiet. The house bills, the TV bill, the rent, everything. There was a pause. Then came the reaction. Soft murmurs. A few impressed nods. Someone said, "That's amazing." Another voice whispered, "She's so responsible." Linda smiled, soaking it in. I felt something shift inside my chest, not a sharp pain, not something dramatic. It felt more like something loosening, something quietly breaking free from where it had been holding on for years. I looked at Linda. really looked at her. She did not look back at me. She looked at her friends. At that moment, I understood something that took me a long time to accept. The humiliation did not come from her words. It came from how easily she said them. I stood there, surrounded by decorations I had paid for, food I had ordered, music I had chosen, and I had never felt smaller in my own life. No one laughed at me. No one pointed. They did not need to. The room was full, but I had never felt more alone. Linda lifted the mic again, ready to continue speaking, ready to enjoy the image she had created. And that was when I realized something else. If I stayed silent, this version of me would be the only one they remembered. My hands, folded so neatly in front of me, began to tremble, not with fear, but with a decision slowly taking shape. I did not move yet, but somewhere deep inside me, a quiet voice spoke for the first time that night. Enough. The room stayed quiet for a few seconds after Linda finished speaking. Not an uncomfortable quiet, the kind of quiet that waits for permission to react. Then someone clapped. Just one pair of hands at first. Soft, polite. Another followed. Then another. Applause spread across the room like it had been planned. I watched it happen the way you watch rain through a window, knowing you are getting soaked, but not feeling the drops yet. Linda laughed into the microphone. She brushed a strand of hair behind her ear, enjoying the attention, enjoying the image she had painted so carefully. "You're amazing," one of her friends said loudly. "I wish my mom was like that," another added. Linda smiled again, bigger this time. I did not smile. My eyes moved slowly across the faces in front of me. Young faces, open faces. Faces that believed what they were hearing because there was no reason not to. Why would anyone lie like that? That question echoed inside me, louder than the music, louder than the applause. I felt my knees weaken slightly, so I leaned back against the wall. The cool surface pressed into my spine, grounding me, keeping me upright. I did not want to sit. I did not want to leave. I wanted to understand how my own child had learned to erase me so easily. Linda lowered the mic and accepted a hug from one of her friends. Another friend leaned in to whisper something, and Linda laughed again, the kind of laugh that lifts the room. That makes others want to laugh too. The microphone was placed back on its stand. The music came back on, louder now. People started moving again, filling the space with motion and sound, as if nothing important had just happened, as if something inside me had not just cracked open. I stayed where I was. I told myself to breathe slowly. In through the nose, out through the mouth. I had learned that trick years ago, during nights when sleep refused to come and thoughts became too heavy to carry. I watched Linda move through the crowd, accepting compliments, posing for pictures. She looked lighter than I had seen her in months. That hurt more than the lie, because it meant the lie had given her something she needed. My mind drifted, not by choice, to small moments I had ignored before. The way she no longer asked before using my card. The way she spoke about my house instead of our home. The way she sighed when bills came in, even though she never paid them. I had told myself it was just a phase. I had told myself young people learn later. Standing there, listening to laughter built on my silence, I realized how dangerous that excuse had been. Someone walked up to me, a woman about Linda's age, holding a drink. "You must be so proud," she said kindly. Her eyes were warm, honest. I looked at her. Really looked. "Yes," I said slowly, "I am." The words tasted strange in my mouth. Not bitter, just unfinished. She smiled and walked away, satisfied with the answer. I watched her go, and something inside me settled. I understood then that no one in that room was cruel. They were simply unaware. And awareness, I had learned this too late, does not arrive on its own. I turned my head toward the kitchen. The countertop was crowded with plates, food trays, napkins I had folded myself earlier that afternoon. My hands had moved automatically back then, muscle memory guiding them as I prepared for a celebration I thought I was part of. I remembered standing there alone, hours before the guests arrived, checking the list one last time. Decorations and paid. Food, paid. Music's paid. Cake, paid. Everything settled. Everything quiet. I had stood in that same kitchen and told myself, this is worth it. I closed my eyes for a brief moment. I did not feel anger. Not yet. What I felt was something colder, something steadier, a realization. Linda had not just spoken a lie. She had built a version of herself using my silence as the foundation. And silence, I understood now, is a form of permission. The music shifted to another song. People cheered. Someone turned the volume higher. Linda climbed onto the small stage they had set up. She waved dramatically, encouraging people to dance. "Come on," she shouted. "Let's make this night unforgettable." Unforgettable. I believed her. I watched her spin, arms in the air, her face glowing under the lights. For a moment, I saw the little girl she used to be, the one who held my hand tightly crossing the street, the one who used to ask me if I would always be there. That memory almost broke me. Almost. But then another thought followed it, firm and unyielding. Always being there does not mean always disappearing. My chest rose and fell slowly. I straightened my back. For years, I had taught Linda how to stand tall. I realized then it was time to show her what that truly looked like. I pushed myself away from the wall and took one step forward. No one noticed. I took another. Still nothing. The room was alive with movement now, dancing, laughing, living. And yet, with every step, the noise felt further away. I reached the edge of the crowd and stopped. The microphone was still on its stand, untouched, waiting. I did not reach for it. Not yet, because before speaking, there was something I needed to decide. I asked myself one simple question. Was I ready to be seen? Not as Linda's background, not as a quiet figure near the wall, but as myself. The answer came without hesitation. Yes, but not with tears, not with raised voices. With truth, I stepped back once more, just enough to breathe. I knew now that when I walked forward again, something would change, not just for Linda, but for me. And once spoken, truth does not return quietly. I did not touch the microphone yet. Instead, I stood there and let the memories come. They did not arrive gently. They came the way unpaid bills arrive, quietly, but heavy enough to sit on your chest. I remembered the first month after my husband passed. The house felt too large then, every sound echoing longer than it should. Linda had still been in school. She would sit at the table doing homework while I spread papers in front of me, statements, notices, envelopes that did not care about grief. I learned numbers in those days the way some people learn a new language. Rent, electricity, water, insurance, food. I learned how much silence costs. Later, when Linda grew older, the bills grew too. College forms, phone upgrades, clothes she said she needed. I never said no, not because I could not, but because I believed love was proven through sacrifice. That belief sat with me now, heavy and familiar. The room around me pulsed with music. Someone laughed loudly near the couch. Glasses clinked. A burst of applause rose when Linda did a dramatic spin on the stage. I stayed still. I thought about the pension I receive every month. Not much, just enough, if you are careful. I had been careful all my life. I learned to stretch money the way you stretch dough. Slowly, patiently, knowing when to stop before it tears. Linda never knew that part. She never saw me sit at the table late at night, calculator beside me, rechecking numbers even though I knew them by heart. She never saw me decide which bill could wait a day or two so another could be paid on time. She never saw the way my hands shook the first time I paid for her car insurance, or the relief I felt when the payment went through. She never asked. And I never offered, because somewhere along the way, I had confused privacy with invisibility. I watched Linda step down from the stage, breathless, happy. One of her friends handed her a drink. Another wrapped an arm around her shoulders. "You're so strong," someone said to her. Strong. The word landed strangely. I had carried this household for years. I had carried loss, responsibility, and quiet fear without ever calling myself strong. And yet here she was, being praised for something she had never done. I felt the urge to correct it rise up quickly, sharp and hot. I swallowed it. Not because it wasn't true, but because truth, I had learned, needs timing as much as courage. I moved toward the hallway instead, my steps slow, deliberate. The noise softened as I walked away from the center of the room. In the bathroom, I closed the door behind me. The mirror reflected a woman I barely recognized. Not because she looked old, but because she looked tired of pretending she was fine. I leaned closer, studying my face, the lines near my eyes, the calm expression I had perfected over decades. People often mistook it for weakness. I placed my hands on the sink and breathed. I paid for everything, I whispered to my reflection. The words felt real, solid. I paid for this party. I paid for this house. I paid for the quiet. My voice did not shake. That surprised me. I straightened up and smoothed my clothes, the same way I had done before every difficult conversation in my life. Then I opened the door and stepped back into the noise. The music greeted me again, louder now. Someone had turned on the lights near the stage. The microphone still stood there, waiting. I walked toward it slowly. A few people noticed me this time. Their eyes followed me, curious but unconcerned. I heard someone whisper, "That's her mom." Linda was laughing near the table, her back to me. I stopped a few steps away from the microphone. My heart beat steadily. No rush, no panic. I realized then that this was not a moment of anger. It was a moment of correction. I reached out and wrapped my fingers around the microphone. The sound cut through the music again, sharp, commanding. The room quieted faster this time. Linda turned. Her smile faltered when she saw me. Just slightly. Enough. I lifted the microphone closer, my voice calm, measured, carrying the weight of years that had finally decided to speak. "May I say something?" I asked. The question was polite. The impact was not. The room held its breath. And Linda, for the first time that night, did not know what would come next. The silence was heavier than the music had been. Dozens of eyes rested on me, curious, expectant, a few uncomfortable. I could feel their questions without anyone saying a word. Linda stood still, her drink forgotten in her hand. Her face had not turned angry, not yet. It had turned uncertain, and that I realized frightened her more. I held the microphone close, but I did not speak immediately. I let the quiet stretch. I had learned long ago that silence can do what shouting never will. "My name is Margaret," I said finally, my voice steady, unhurried. A few heads tilted. People listened more closely now. "I don't usually like attention," I continued. "And I don't like interrupting celebrations." I paused, looking around the room. "But sometimes," I said, "a person has to interrupt a lie before it grows roots." The words landed softly. No gasps. No murmurs. Just stillness. I glanced toward Linda, then back to the room. "I want to be very clear," I said, "because clarity is kinder than confusion." I breathed in slowly. "I pay my own bills." A ripple moved through the crowd. Not loud, but unmistakable. A shift. People leaned forward slightly, as if trying to hear better. "I pay the rent, the utilities, the groceries, the insurance." My voice did not rise. It did not tremble. "And I paid for this evening." Someone near the couch lowered their phone. Linda's eyes widened. I kept going. "I don't say this for praise," I said calmly. "And I don't say it to embarrass anyone." That was true. I had passed embarrassment long ago. I say it because truth matters, especially when it's spoken into a microphone. The room stayed quiet. Linda took one step toward me, then stopped. "Mom," she began. I raised my hand slightly. "Let me finish," I said, not sharply, just firmly. She froze. I turned back to the room. "I love my daughter," I said. "And loving someone doesn't mean letting them build confidence on something that doesn't belong to them." I let that settle. Then I added, "This party was meant to celebrate her age, not erase my life." No one laughed. No one clapped. This silence was different. This silence listened. I lowered the microphone slightly and looked straight at Linda. "I didn't come up here to punish you," I said. "I came up here because I raised you to be honest." Her mouth opened, then closed again. For the first time that night, she looked small, not because I made her so, but because truth has a way of changing the size of things. I turned back to the microphone. "That's all I needed to say," I said. And I meant it. I placed the microphone back on its stand. My hands were calm as I did it. I did not rush. I stepped away from the stage. The room remained frozen, unsure how to react now that the picture they had been given no longer fit the frame. Linda stood still. I walked past her. She did not stop me. As I moved toward the front door, someone finally spoke. I didn't know, a young woman said quietly. I nodded once, not in agreement, but in acknowledgement. I reached the door and paused, my hand resting on the handle. There was one more thing left to do. I turned back, my voice carrying across the room without the microphone. Please enjoy what's left of the evening, I said gently. But the arrangements have been canceled. Confusion erupted softly. What does that mean? Someone asked. It means, I said calmly, the catering will be picked up. The music will stop shortly, and the space needs to be cleared. Linda's head snapped up. You can't do that, she said, her voice breaking for the first time. I can, I replied, because I paid for it. The words were simple. They were final. I opened the door and stepped outside. The cool air hit my face, and for the first time that night, I felt like I could breathe. I did not cry, not then. I walked down the steps slowly, each one deliberate, each one lighter than the last. Behind me, the house buzzed with confusion, whispers, hurried explanations. Ahead of me, the street was quiet. I walked forward, and with every step away from that door, I felt something I had not felt in years. Respect for myself. The door closed behind me with a soft sound. No slam, no drama. Just a quiet click that felt louder than any applause I had heard that night. I stood on the front steps for a moment, my hand still resting on the railing. The air outside was cooler, cleaner. It smelled like night, like space, like distance. I took a slow breath. Inside the house, I could hear muffled voices now. Confusion had replaced celebration. Chairs scraping. Someone asking questions too late. I did not turn around. I had spent too many years turning around. I walked down the steps carefully, one foot at a time. My knees protested slightly, but I welcomed the feeling. It reminded me that I was still here, still solid. The streetlights cast long shadows on the pavement. My shadow moved with me, steady and sure. I thought of all the times I had waited for appreciation, waited for acknowledgement, waited for someone to notice how much I carried. Tonight I had stopped waiting. As I reached the sidewalk, my phone vibrated in my pocket. I did not check it. I already knew who it would be. I walked instead. Each step took me farther from the noise, farther from the image Linda had created, farther from the version of myself that stayed quiet to keep peace. My mind replayed the moment I had placed the microphone back on its stand. My hands had not shaken. That surprised me the most. I had always thought speaking up would feel like standing on unstable ground, like something might give way beneath me. But the ground had held, strong, firm, just like it always had. I had simply forgotten to trust it. I reached the corner of the street and slowed down. My breath settled into a calm rhythm. My heart no longer raced. A car passed by, headlights briefly lighting my face. The driver did not know who I was, what had just happened, or what I had just reclaimed. And that was fine. Some victories do not need witnesses. I thought about Linda, about the look on her face when the truth had reached her ears, without softening itself first. I did not feel satisfaction. I felt relief. There is a difference. Satisfaction feeds the ego. Relief frees the spirit. I reached into my pocket and finally looked at my phone. 3 missed calls, all from Linda. I did not call back. Not because I was angry, but because some conversations need silence before they can find honesty. I slipped the phone back into my pocket and continued walking. With every step, memories surfaced. Not painful ones this time, but reminders. I remembered teaching Linda how to ride a bike. How I ran beside her, one hand on the seat until she found her balance. How she yelled, "Don't let go!" even when she was already riding on her own. I had let go that day. She had never fallen. Tonight felt the same. Except this time, I was the one riding forward. I reached a small bench near the bus stop and sat down slowly. My legs welcomed the rest. I placed my hands on my lap and looked up at the sky. No tears came. I realized then that I had already cried enough over the years. Quietly, privately, without audience. Tonight did not deserve tears. Tonight deserved clarity. I thought about what would happen next. Linda would feel embarrassed. Her friends would talk. Stories would spread. That was out of my control. What was in my control was what I would allow from now on. I had not taken revenge. I had taken responsibility, one for myself. And responsibility, I knew, always changes the shape of relationships. A bus pulled up nearby, its brakes hissing softly. A few people got off. A few got on. Life moved forward, indifferent to personal drama. I smiled faintly at that. I stood up again, feeling steadier than before. I knew Linda would come to me eventually. With words. With explanations. With apologies, real or rehearsed. When she did, I would be ready. Not to scold. Not to lecture. But to listen. And to draw lines that had been missing for far too long. I turned back toward the direction of my home. Not to return to the party, but to return to myself. And as I walked, one thought stayed with me, clear and calm. Walking away is not weakness. Sometimes it is the strongest step a person can take. The house felt different when I returned. Not empty, not broken, just honest. The lights were still on, the decorations still hanging where I had left them. Streamers drooped now, tired from a celebration that never finished becoming what it was meant to be. I closed the door gently behind me. Inside, the air held a faint smell of food and something sharper. Disappointment. Maybe, or the sudden end of noise. I set my purse down on the table and stood there for a moment, listening. No music. No laughter. Just the soft hum of the refrigerator. I walked into the living room slowly. The chairs were scattered. A few plates sat untouched. The cake, still perfect. Still waiting. Rested on the counter like a question no one had answered. I did not sit. Instead, I began to clean. Not because I felt responsible for the mess, but because movement steadied my thoughts. I gathered cups, folded napkins, stacked plates. Each small action reminded me that I was capable, present, and calm. I did not rush. With every item I picked up, I felt the night settle into place, not as chaos, but as a turning point. My phone buzzed again. I ignored it. Then again. And again. I knew Linda would not stop calling yet. She had always believed urgency could bend situations in her favor. I rinsed a plate under warm water and watched the steam rise. Patience, I reminded myself, is not silence. It is timing. I wiped my hands on a towel and finally checked my phone. 7 missed calls. 3 messages. I did not open them. Instead, I walked to my room and sat on the edge of the bed. The lamp cast a soft glow, familiar and comforting. This room had always been mine, even when the rest of the house felt like it belonged to someone else. I leaned back and closed my eyes. For the first time that night, a tear slipped free. Just one. It rolled down slowly, not from pain, but from release. I wiped it away and breathed deeply. A knock came at the door. Not loud, not hesitant, just present. "Mom!" Linda's voice followed. "Can I come in?" I waited a few seconds before answering. "Yes," I said. The door opened slowly. Linda stood there without her heels now, without the confident posture she had worn all evening. Her shoulders were tense, her face bare of performance. She stepped inside and closed the door behind her. We stood facing each other, the space between us filled with things that had never been said out loud before. "I didn't know you'd do that," she said finally. I nodded once. "I didn't know I would either," I replied. She crossed her arms, then uncrossed them. Sat on the chair near the wall. Stood again. "They're all talking," she said. "Everyone's confused." "I imagine they are," I said calmly. She looked at me then. Really looked. As if seeing something new. "You embarrassed me," she said. I met her gaze without flinching. "No," I said gently. "I corrected something that was wrong." She opened her mouth to argue, then stopped. Silence stretched again. Not hostile, but heavy with truth. "I was just trying to look good," she said quietly. I nodded. "I know." That surprised her. "You do?" she asked. "Yes," I said. "Everyone wants to look strong." But strength built on someone else's silence does not last. Her eyes filled just slightly. I didn't think it would hurt you, she said. That's the part that matters, I replied. She looked down at her hands. I'm sorry, she said. The words came out slowly, unsure of themselves. I didn't mean to make it seem like you depend on me. I took a breath. I don't depend on you, I said. And you don't need to depend on me the way you have been. She frowned, confused. What do you mean? I leaned forward slightly, my voice steady. I mean it's time you start taking responsibility for your own expenses, I said. Not as punishment, as growth. She looked up sharply. I can't afford everything, she said. You can afford what belongs to you, I replied. Another pause. I'll help when it's needed, I added. But not in silence. Not in a way that makes me disappear. She swallowed. I didn't realize, she said again. I know, I said. But now you do. She nodded slowly. I'll pay my own bills, she said. I'll handle my phone, my subscriptions. Everything. I watched her closely. Not as a promise to me, I said. As a promise to yourself. She nodded again, more firmly this time. I forgive you, I said. Her head snapped up. You do? Yes, I said. But forgiveness does not erase responsibility. She understood that. I could see it in the way her shoulders dropped. The way she finally breathed out. I'll do better, she said. I believe you can, I replied. She stood and moved toward the door, then stopped. Thank you, she said quietly. For telling the truth. I watched her leave. When the door closed, I sat back on the bed and smiled faintly. Not because the night had been easy, but because it had been necessary. The house did not empty all at once. It never does. People leave slowly when joy turns awkward. They linger near doors, whisper to each other, check their phones, pretend they are not relieved to go. I stayed in my room while it happened. I could hear the sounds through the walls, chairs being dragged back into place, soft apologies offered without direction, quick footsteps heading toward the door. Someone laughed nervously near the hallway. Someone else said, I guess we should go. No one said goodbye to me, and I did not need them to. Linda moved through the house quietly now. I could hear her voice change, softer, lower, stripped of the confidence she had worn earlier. She thanked people for coming. She apologized without fully explaining. She nodded more than she spoke. The music stayed off. That silence was intentional. I listened without listening, folding my sweater carefully, straightening the edge of the bedspread. My hands moved with purpose, not distraction. When the last door finally closed, the house exhaled. I stepped out into the hallway. Linda was standing in the living room, staring at the decorations as if they belonged to someone else. The balloons had begun to sag. The streamers drooped unevenly, tired and pointless. She looked smaller in that space. Not weak, just human. I'll clean up, she said quickly when she saw me. You don't have to. I know, I said. But I want to help. She hesitated, then nodded. We worked side by side without speaking at first. She gathered plates. I untied ribbons. The quiet between us was not tense, it was thoughtful. After a while, she spoke. They were laughing when they left, she said, not accusing. Just stating. I paused, holding a length of ribbon in my hand. Yes, I said. She winced. I deserved that, she said quietly. I looked at her. Humiliation teaches nothing if it turns into bitterness, I said. Let it teach awareness instead. She nodded slowly. We continued cleaning. When the room was finally clear, Linda sat down heavily on the couch. She rubbed her face with both hands. I didn't think it would end like this, she said. Most lessons don't announce themselves, I replied. She looked at me then, eyes tired, stripped of defensiveness. Why didn't you ever say anything before? She asked. The question was honest. I sat across from her. Because I thought protecting you meant protecting your image, I said. I was wrong. She frowned slightly. I didn't mean to take advantage of you, she said. I know, I replied. But intention doesn't erase impact. She absorbed that quietly. I've already canceled the rest of the services, she said after a moment. The caterer, the rental company. They weren't happy. I smiled faintly. They rarely are, I said. She hesitated. I'll pay you back, she said. For everything. I shook my head. No, I said. You'll start paying forward, by taking care of your own responsibilities. She nodded again, firmer this time. I'll start tomorrow, she said. I'll switch the phone bill to my name. Cancel subscriptions I don't need. I studied her face. This was not a promise spoken into panic. This was planning. That's a good start, I said. She leaned back, exhausted. I really thought being seen as responsible would make people respect me, she said. I considered that. Respect that requires lies is fragile, I said. It breaks easily. She closed her eyes briefly. I hate that they laughed, she said. I know, I replied. But laughter passes, I added. Character stays. She opened her eyes again, meeting mine. I want to earn mine, she said. I believed her. Not completely, but enough. Because trust, I had learned, grows the way responsibility does, gradually, through action. We sat there for a while longer, not speaking, not avoiding each other either. Eventually, Linda stood. I'm going to bed, she said. So am I replied. As I turned toward my room, she stopped me. Mom, she said. I turned back. Thank you. For not yelling, she said. For not making it worse. I smiled gently. I didn't do it for you, I said. I did it for me. She nodded, understanding something new. That night, as I lay in bed, sleep came easily. Not because everything was fixed, but because nothing was hidden anymore. The next morning did not arrive with drama. No slammed doors. No raised voices. No heavy silence. It arrived quietly, the way real change usually does. I woke up early, as I always had. Habit does not disappear just because life shifts. I made myself a cup of tea and sat at the kitchen table, watching the light move slowly across the floor. The house felt calm. Not tense calm. Honest calm. Linda came out of her room later than usual. She did not have her phone in her hand this time. That caught my attention. Good morning, she said. Good morning, I replied. She poured herself coffee and sat across from me. For a moment, she just sat there, staring into her cup as if gathering courage from the steam. I called the phone company, she said finally. I looked up. They're switching the account to my name, she continued. I'll start paying next cycle. I nodded once. Okay, I said. No praise. No celebration. Just acknowledgement. She glanced at me, perhaps expecting more. You don't seem surprised, she said. I'm not, I replied. You said you would do it. She absorbed that quietly. I also canceled 3 subscriptions I don't really use, she added. Streaming, music, things I never thought about before. I smiled faintly. Money has a way of becoming visible when it belongs to you, I said. She exhaled slowly. I didn't realize how much I was spending, she admitted. That's because you weren't feeling it, I said gently. Responsibility has weight. She nodded. After breakfast, Linda left for work. I stayed behind, cleaning slowly, thinking carefully. Something inside me had shifted, not toward suspicion, but toward boundaries. For the first time in years, I did not feel the need to monitor everything. I did not feel the need to prepare explanations or soften truths. I felt settled. In the afternoon, the mail arrived. Bills. I opened them calmly, one by one. There was no fear in my chest this time. I knew what belonged to me and what no longer did. That evening, Linda came home with grocery bags. I bought my own, she said quickly, setting them on the counter. Didn't touch yours. I nodded again. Good, I said. She hesitated. I used my card, she added. Not yours. I assumed you would, I replied. She watched me closely, as if trying to understand something deeper. You really trust me to handle this, she said. I trust you to learn, I said. Trust grows from consistency, not promises. She accepted that. Days passed. Not dramatically. Productively. Linda paid her bills. She complained less. She asked questions, real ones, about budgeting, about planning, about what things actually cost. I answered when asked. I did not rescue when things felt uncomfortable. One evening, she sat beside me on the couch, looking tired but thoughtful. My friends keep texting, she said. Some apologized. Some stopped talking. That happens, I said. It still stings, she admitted. I know, I replied. But discomfort is not damage. It's instruction. She leaned her head back. I never thought I'd learn this lesson from you. Like that, she said. I didn't plan it that way, I said. But sometimes lessons choose their moment. She turned to me. Do you regret it? She asked. I considered the question carefully. No, I said. I regret waiting so long. She nodded slowly. That night, as I prepared for bed, I caught my reflection in the mirror again. This time, the woman looking back at me looked lighter. Not younger, not changed, just visible. And for the first time in a long while, I felt certain of something. Respect does not come from sacrifice alone. It comes from clarity. People talk. They always do. They talk in messages sent late at night. They talk in voices lowered just enough to sound private. They talk because silence makes them uneasy. I heard about it without trying to. Linda would come home with that look, the one that sits between embarrassment and reflection. She did not complain the way she used to. She reported, as if collecting information for a lesson she was still learning. Someone posted about it, she said one evening, setting her bag down slowly. I kept folding laundry. What did they say? I asked. She hesitated. That it was awkward, she said. That it was unexpected. I nodded. Truth often is, I replied. She leaned against the counter. They said you were calm, she added. Too calm. I smiled faintly. That surprises people, I said. She watched me for a moment. They thought you were going to yell, she admitted. Or cry? I've done enough of both in private, I said. I didn't owe anyone a performance. She absorbed that quietly. The next day, she told me 2 friends had stopped responding altogether. Another had apologized sincerely. One had said nothing, but sent a message weeks later asking how I was. How did that make you feel? I asked her. Strange, she said. Like I was seeing people more clearly. I nodded. Clarity can be uncomfortable, I said. But it's useful. As the days turned into weeks, the noise softened. People moved on. New conversations replaced old ones. That night became a reference point, then a memory, then just another lesson tucked away in someone else's life. In our house, something steadier took its place. Linda kept paying her bills. On time, without reminders. She tracked her spending now. Sometimes sitting at the table with a notebook, tapping numbers into her phone. She asked questions that showed effort, not panic. What do you do when something unexpected comes up? She asked once. You prepare before it does, I said. And when you can't, you adjust without pretending it didn't happen. She wrote that down. I noticed changes in myself, too. I stopped over-explaining. I stopped checking receipts that weren't mine. I stopped feeling responsible for outcomes that did not belong to me. That was new. One afternoon, Linda came home earlier than usual and sat beside me in the living room. She didn't speak at first. She just sat there, hands clasped, thinking. I feel guilty, she said finally. I did not rush to answer. About what? I asked. About how easy it was for me to say what I said, she admitted. About you. I nodded slowly. Guilt can be useful, I said. If it points you toward change instead of self-punishment. She sighed. I keep replaying it, she said. The way everyone believed me. That's because confidence convinces, I said. Not truth. She turned toward me. How did you not explode? She asked. How did you stand there like that? I considered the question carefully. Because anger would have centered me, I said. And this was never about me being seen as right. It was about being accurate. She frowned slightly. Accurate? Yes, I said. Accurate about who pays. Accurate about who carries what. Accurate about where responsibility actually lives. She leaned back. I think I understand, she said. I believed her. That night, as I sat alone after she went to bed, I reflected on something else. Something quieter. For years, I had feared that standing up would create distance, that it would damage love. What I learned instead was this. Love that requires disappearance is not love. Love that survives honesty becomes stronger. I slept well that night. Not because everything was perfect, but because everything was aligned. It happened on a quiet Sunday afternoon. No argument. No build-up. Just a knock on my door. Linda stood there with a folder in her hand. Not her phone. Not her bag. A thin folder, edges worn like it had been opened and closed too many times already. "Can we talk?" she asked. I nodded and stepped aside. She sat at the table and opened the folder carefully, as if the papers inside mattered more than words. She slid them toward me. Bills, receipts, statements. "I wanted you to see," she said. "Not to prove anything. Just to be transparent." I did not touch the papers yet. I looked at her. "Why now?" I asked. "Because responsibility shouldn't be private," she replied. "It shouldn't hide." That answer told me more than the numbers ever could. I picked up the papers then. I didn't examine them closely. I didn't need to. What mattered was not the math. It was the posture behind it. "I'm covering everything that belongs to me," she continued. "Phone, internet, my subscriptions, transportation. I adjusted my hours at work." She paused. "It's tighter than I expected," she admitted. "But it's real." I set the folder down. "This is what adulthood feels like," I said gently. "Not comfort, ownership." She nodded. "I also talked to my friends," she said. "Not all of them. The ones that mattered." "And?" I asked. "I told them the truth," she said. "About everything." Some were quiet. Some apologized. A few didn't know what to say. "That's their work now," I said. She let out a breath she had been holding. "I didn't ask you for help," she said. Even when it got uncomfortable. I met her eyes. "That's important," I said. She shifted in her seat. "So, about forgiveness," she began. I waited. "I know you said you forgave me," she said. "But I don't want that to mean we go back to how things were." I smiled slightly. "Neither do I said. She looked relieved. "I want it to mean something different," she continued. "Something earned." I leaned forward. "Then let me be clear," I said. "Forgiveness is not a reset. It's a boundary." She listened closely. "It means I don't hold this over your head," I continued. "But it also means I don't carry what belongs to you anymore." She nodded. "It means honesty," I added. "Even when it costs you approval." "I can do that," she said. "It means respect," I said. "Not in front of others only. In private, too." Her eyes softened. "I understand," she said. "And it means," I finished, "that if this balance slips again, we address it early, not through silence." She took that in carefully. "Deal," she said. We shook hands. Not dramatically, just simply. Later that evening, Linda cooked dinner. She paid for the groceries. She cleaned without being asked. She thanked me, not with words, but with presence. As we ate, she looked at me and said something that stayed with me. "I think I confused being admired with being respected," she said. I nodded. "Many people do," I replied. "And I used you to get admired," she added quietly. I didn't respond right away. Then I said, "And now you're learning how to be respected." She smiled, not brightly, not performatively. Honestly, that night when I went to bed, I felt something settle fully inside me. Not closure. Alignment. Forgiveness changed the air in the house. Not suddenly, not magically, but steadily, like furniture being rearranged after years of living around the same sharp corner. The next few weeks taught me something important. Forgiving someone does not make life softer. It makes it clearer. Linda followed through on what she had promised. Not loudly. Not to impress me, just consistently. Bills moved out of my name. Notices stopped arriving for things that were never truly mine. My table felt lighter without piles of paper waiting for decisions. I should not have been making any more. One evening, as I balanced my checkbook, I realized something that surprised me. I was no longer anxious. For years, money had sat in my chest like a held breath, not because I didn't have enough, but because I carried more than I should have. Now the numbers made sense again. They belonged to me. Linda noticed the change too. "You seem calmer," she said one night as we sat watching television. "I am," I replied. Is it because I'm paying my own way now? She asked carefully. It's because I'm living my own, I said. She nodded, understanding the difference. Forgiveness, I learned, is often misunderstood. People think it means forgetting. It doesn't. People think it means softening boundaries. It doesn't. Forgiveness, when done honestly, requires a spine. One afternoon, Linda came to me with a question. Can I borrow some money? She asked. The room stayed quiet. Old habits stirred. The automatic yes, the instinct to rescue, the belief that love meant smoothing discomfort. I took a breath. What for? I asked. My car needs repairs, she said. I can cover part of it, but not all. I nodded slowly. Show me the estimate, I said. She did. I studied it calmly. I can loan you a portion, I said. Not a gift, a loan. With a repayment plan? She did not flinch. That's fair, she said. That moment told me everything I needed to know. She wasn't asking to be saved. She was asking to be supported. There is a difference. As weeks passed, Linda grew more grounded. Not quieter, saw clearer. She spoke differently around me now. Not defensive. Not performative. Respect had replaced fear. One night, while washing dishes together, she said something that caught me off guard. I used to think you were strong because you endured everything, she said. I glanced at her. And now? I asked. Now I think you're strong because you stopped, she said. I smiled softly. That was wisdom speaking, not youth. I began to speak more openly, too. Not about pain, but about principles. I told her what I had learned over decades. That dignity is not loud. That self-respect does not beg. That love survives truth better than silence. She listened. Not as a child. As an adult. One evening, I sat alone after Linda went out, thinking about the women who might be listening to my voice one day. Women my age, who had given and given until nothing seemed left but fatigue. I wished I could tell them this. You do not have to wait for permission to reclaim yourself. You do not have to wait for gratitude to draw boundaries. You do not have to wait for disrespect to become unbearable before you speak. Age does not make you invisible. Silence does. And silence, once broken, does not need to be repaired. As I prepared for bed that night, I felt something settle deeper than peace. Authority. Not over others. Over myself. Time has a way of slowing down when life finally makes sense. Not because there is nothing left to learn, but because you stop rushing toward approval that was never meant to feed you. Months passed quietly after that night. Not the kind of quiet that hides things. The kind that allows them to breathe. Linda settled into her routines. She paid what belonged to her. She planned ahead. She stumbled sometimes, not into old habits, but into reality. And when she did, she corrected herself without drama. That mattered more to me than perfection ever could. One afternoon, we sat together on the porch, the air warm, the world moving at a pace that suited us both. Linda broke the silence. I think about that night sometimes, she said. So do I replied. I wish I could undo it, she added. I shook my head gently. No, I said. You wish you could skip the discomfort, not the lesson. She smiled faintly. You're probably right. I looked out at the street, at people passing by with their own invisible burdens. Life doesn't give refunds, I said. It gives understanding. She leaned back in her chair. I used to think growing up meant freedom, she said. Now I think it means responsibility. That's closer to the truth, I replied. She turned to me. And you? She asked. What do you think this stage of life means? I thought about it for a moment. It means discernment, I said. Knowing what deserves your energy and what never did. She nodded slowly. That evening, after she went out, I stayed behind and reflected, not with regret, but with clarity. I thought about all the women I had known. Women who stayed quiet to keep families together. Women who paid silently, not just with money, but with self-erasure. Women who believed love required endurance without limits. I wanted them to know something I had learned late, but not too late. You can love deeply without disappearing. You can give generously without being used. You can forgive fully without surrendering dignity. Age does not weaken your voice. It sharpens it if you let it. What happened on that birthday was never about humiliation. It was about truth arriving without warning. It was about a daughter learning that confidence built on illusion collapses the moment honesty enters the room. And it was about a woman, me, finally understanding that respect does not come from how much you carry for others, but from how clearly you carry yourself. Linda and I are closer now. Not emotionally tangled. Emotionally honest. She sees me, not as a background figure, not as a safety net she never had to acknowledge. She sees me as a person, and I see her, not as someone who needs saving, but as someone capable of standing. That balance is the quiet reward of wisdom. If there is one thing I would leave behind for anyone listening at this stage of life, it is this. Do not confuse patience with permission. Do not confuse silence with peace. And do not wait for disrespect to become unbearable before you correct it. Sometimes the calmest voice in the room is the most powerful one. And sometimes walking away is not an ending. It is the moment you finally arrive. At yourself,